All right, folks, it's been a hot minute since we've had an episode of Lulls, but there has been so much going on in the fantasy space, even in a lot of different industries right now. A lot of change, a lot of market uncertainty that has, of course, resulted in a lot of high profile layoffs, at least within our neck of the woods. And so kind of wanted to have one of the classic, DFS State of the Unions that we've been known to have here sometimes on the program. And to do so, we had to bring on Dan Bach, the guy that Kitchen and I lovingly refer to as the godfather of DFS, literally the first broadcaster I heard in my ears when I started seeking out DFS podcasts. And so we're going to have a wide ranging conversation today, going to touch on a lot of topics and where we think things are headed. So I'm Pete with Brick, hopefully soon. This is Lulls with Dan Bach.
Does he think? I think he thinks this. He thinks this is a go. Vegas Dave thinks this is a go.
Hot naked girls doing yoga.
What?
Why don't you just win like a man?
Random.org. Type in 1 for yes, 2 for no, and let the DFS gods pick for you.
And I'm absolutely begging you not to dupe us. Please don't dupe us. All right, Dan. So when you left Better Collective, did they take your podcast studio as well? They thrust you into the bedroom. That's all you got left now?
Yeah, I hadn't been a podcaster for a while. I kind of moved to radio, which is wonderful because it's just audio. Nobody needs to see me or anything, so this setup would work. But yeah, I've moved into the guest room. This is where I do all my calls now, and it's interesting times here in the world of Dan Bach. Not to talk like that, but I haven't. It's an adjustment going from doing something for like 15 years straight to doing, I don't want to say nothing, but pretty much nothing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Why don't you fill people in, as of like a few weeks ago, what was your title? What was your role with Better Collective? Because that had obviously changed from, a few years previously, like back when I got to know you with the Roto Grinders days initially.
Yeah, it started, many years ago, just doing the podcast and being media director. Roto Grinders got acquired in 2019 and completed that acquisition in 2021. And that's when I moved into the, general manager position for Roto Grinders, ended up taking over on Fantasy Labs as well as Scores and Odds and Vegas Insider. So I had my hands in a lot of different websites around DFS and gaming, and things are going well. Obviously, acquisition life, it's very different when you're a part of a bootstrap company in terms of the day-to-day, the expectations, versus when you're acquired by a larger company that has hundreds of domains and many other companies. You're just a small piece of the giant puzzle. So about 2 weeks ago, got the old, hey, you got 15 minutes, and basically had my position decided to didn't need it anymore, which is totally fine, totally up to them to make that call. There was a restructure in place, and they just felt like they didn't need actual site leads, and totally respect their decision, their business to run how they want. Was I surprised by it? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, we've seen so much turnover in all sorts of industries, not just the DFS and gambling space. So was I totally shocked? Probably not. But was I disappointed? For sure. Because when you're a part of something for as long as I was, it's hard to kind of let it go and find your new way, because you've been doing a part of something for so long. And that's kind of the world, the life that I've been to right now is trying to figure A, what I want to do next, and B, what am I going to do to keep me busy for the next 8 hours until my wife and kids come home. So that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, I know. I always feel like you always hear the stories of people not saying, not that you're retired, but like a similar effect when you have all of this time free up, and then it's just like you feel, directionless of like, no, I had this thing that I naturally filled my time with. And then when I don't have that, I don't know what to do with myself. Even I feel that way on days where I don't have a bunch of stuff scheduled. It's like, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I like having momentum to my day, having the tent poles along the way of things I know I'm going to do. So yeah, it's it's a blessing and a curse to have all that time.
For sure. And I mean, I'm not complaining because I'm playing a lot of golf and pickleball, which are like the things that I love to do, keeps me somewhat in shape, takes up a good bit of time. So, you know, I'm enjoying myself on that front, but I'm like 47. Like, I'm not like ready to do that every day for the rest of my life until I die, I don't think. So just trying to figure out what that next step's going to be. And, you know, I have a few ideas. I don't want to even say irons in the fire, but, you know, kind of taking it slow. Definitely not in a hurry to jump at things right off the bat.
I guess one question to ask is like, how much of like what happened at Better Collective do you think was like unique to that situation versus very similar to the industry at large stuff that we're seeing? And is that all like one and the same to you, or is everything kind of on a, you know, case by case basis?
I think it's probably case by case, but I mean, this is, you know, Better Collective in general, just you can see it. They've had major restructures. They were very dependent on Google and some of the, you know, some of the ways that Google, you know, I don't want to say operates, but like a year ago, it was last October, they had a really big, I don't even want to say restructure. They just had to rebase the business, which we saw, you know, quite a few people also have to leave. I think that's when Kitchen, you know, exited the company. And, you know, sometimes these companies, especially when you're publicly traded, you have to do these things because, you know, you've got shareholders and, you know, you read these annual reports, quarterly reports. I mean, it's all about like telling a story, right? That's all it is. And at the end of the day, though, there was a lot of that happened in the company that were probably out of their control. Some of the things may have been in their control, but, you know, when you're dependent upon Google on a lot of your business units and things change there that you can't control, it's going to change things. And when that happened, they did a big corporate restructure where, you know, you look at a lot of the senior executives a year ago, they're no longer with the company, either leaving on their own or departing like I did. And it's just kind of what happens sometimes when you go that route. And I learned a lot, believe me. Like, I have not go to business school. I was not somebody who was like formally trained to know what it's like to operate and work and live in a corporate environment. I thought I maneuvered it pretty well over the last, you know, 4.5 years. But certain things are always going to be out of your control, where instead if it's, you know, you're a part of a bootstrap company, there's, you know, 3, 4, 5 principal owners, you get to make those decisions. But in this case, you know, that I obviously didn't have, you know, that sort of power, which is totally fine. That's what comes with, you know, the exit that you get when you sell a company. But I think the interesting thing for me is just seeing, you know, how differently, especially in our space, you know, when you talk about community content and you talk and look at how that can be successful, it's very hard for that to be successful in the corporate world, right? Like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, find me a quote unquote community that is run by a giant corporation, publicly traded company. Off the top of your head, can you think of one that really you can point to and say, man, that has maintained success, you know, after they quote unquote sold out? I don't know that there is that many. I think, you know, Barstool's the closest, but I also think Barstool took a step back when Penn took over.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until they gave the reins back to Portnoy where I think it kind of turned back into the pirate ship and kind of had more of that community. So that's my kind of like take on it, on that.
Yeah, real quick, just appreciate everybody trickling in the chat here. Brad says, what does he mean by reliant on Google? I assume you mean like SEO type stuff, right?
That means like SEO.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. SEO is a very powerful thing. And obviously that's changing as well. When you look at, you know, how AI overviews are now the first thing you see when you do a Google search. Prior to that, it was, you know, what was your domain authority? And if you were looked at as Google as an authority in something, you usually were ranked very, very high. So that's what I meant by that statement. And sometimes Google makes a lot of different business changes along the way where, they changes around media partnerships, where media partnerships used to be a very important thing for a lot of businesses out there in the affiliate space. And they kind of put their foot down. And what that means is it would be like companies would do content for certain media companies. And then that media company who is, has huge domain authority, doesn't know anything about maybe the gambling space, or it could be any space for that matter. They're publishing this content and it ended up ranking very, very well. And they end up just sharing the revenue. And Google basically kind of put their foot down that and said, hey, that's not the spirit of what we want. And that really kind of turned the affiliate business on its head. And that took place, 12, 16 months ago. And that's really when things in terms of the business really just kind of had to realign itself a little bit.
Yeah. And that's what you're talking about too. When a company becomes so big, like if your core business model is affiliate, if you're a smaller company, you can be nimble and kind of change on the fly and be like, all right, now we need to pivot
Correct.
to this. But if you're this big, giant monolith trying to steer it in another direction while, meeting bigger corporate initiatives, like that's basically impossible.
It's hard, and especially when you've got to realize like all these businesses are very different and are all over the world. Like Better Collective isn't a US based business. It's in Copenhagen, Denmark. They have hundreds of domains, tons of business units. Like mine was, we weren't overly reliant on SEO because we were a premium subscription business, right? So, obviously there were some components to that. We did do affiliate, but it wasn't when that change happened. Our business didn't change overnight, where there was certainly other parts of the business that, did kind of have that complete turnover. And, I think, and, credit to BC too, is they recognize this and they're pivoting into other avenues. And I think, that's the smart move, rather, own some IP, own some product, and not necessarily just have a singular bucket that, is determining the success of your business. And, I think they're doing better in that front. But, it's also very different for them because they have really leaned heavily into, affiliate and SEO. And, it takes time to learn how to do some of those other things.
Welcome, Brian. We were just catching up on a little bit of Dan's background for people who weren't familiar, and then kind of getting a little bit of an idea of what happened at Better Collective and how things changed so recently there. But how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming on, Dan. Me and Pete are kind of in our DMs just trying to figure out like what's going on with the space that we're involved in too. So like, I hear you talk about like SEO and affiliate and all the changes over the last, 7 years or so. Do you have kind of more of like a meta thought on, is DFS as big as it used to be, or even best ball, is it dying? Is it maybe plateauing and it'll just kind of go as it's been going the last, year or so? Like, do you have any thoughts on like kind of the general meta of DFS and baseball?
There's no doubt it's plateaued. Anybody who tells you it's not is lying or is not observing the space. And it makes sense though. Look at where DFS was in 2015, 2016. It was an outlet for people to get a sweat on sports, right? And pretty much wherever you lived in the country, it was an easy way for you to get a sweat on sports, win some money along the way. Now, look at how many different avenues there are for you to get a sweat on sports, whether it's sports betting, whether it's prediction markets, whether it's sports cards. I think it's just the change of the world we live in today. We have more options to do things than we used to. And let's face it, DFS is an awesome game. I still love it. but it is a complex game. It's a hard game. It's way easier to pick a side on a player prop or a game than it is to build a 9-person lineup in fantasy football on Sunday to try and take down $1 million, right? Like you and I might think that it's easy. There's tools out there that make it easier, but your average person, which is really the people you need to, scale this industry, looked at it and said, hey, you know what? It's still a lot of work. So I don't think it's going away. It's not going to die, but the competition for people to get a sweat on sports, there's just a myriad of options out there, and they don't need to go to salary cap DFS to do it. That's the biggest difference. I think it's crystal clear.
Yeah. I mean, how much, in the comments, I assume people talk about sims, talk about optimizers and kind of the level of play. I'm guessing it's like a little of column A, a little of column B, the dynamic you described, but also the ecosystem not being able to support, players that weren't leveling up their game constantly. Like you get chewed up and spit out, basically. Whereas I guess the thing is people get chewed up and spit out with SGPs and sports betting and stuff too, but maybe there's a psychological thing about it to where it doesn't feel like, is losing to the house somehow more okay than losing to some giga-brained, sim bro? I'm just trying to figure out that dynamic.
Yeah, I think there's definitely part of it, and especially just the way the brain works. You run a 4-leg parlay and you hit 3 legs and you say to yourself, oh, so close, right? Where DFS, it's hard to even get a top 5% sometimes, right? So I think that definitely plays into it. And let's face it, tailing bets is the trend we're seeing today. That is exactly what we're seeing communities built on, massive communities where it's this is what I'm playing today. Why don't you come along and join me? Now, are they always good? Probably not. But that's a lot harder to do in the DFS space. I mean, when I started a content podcast, it was more just kind of talking about the slate. These are the guys I liked. Here we go. Again, super early days of DFS before we had all the highfalutin tools. And that was good. It served a purpose. It saved people time and research. But in today's world, yeah, I guess you can press a couple buttons on an optimizer. But I think the excitement of that kind of probably falls pretty quickly if you're not winning, as opposed to especially the communities that we're seeing being built in the sports betting world where it's hey, if I win, 50 other people win, and then we can go to our Discord and put all the emojis out there and get excited. I think that is so much easier to build than, the lineups for salary cap DFS. So I think just the options and the way that people can play these games, it's just everything just feels like it's trending away from what we had done for this 10 or 12 years, which is fine, which is okay. That's going to happen. Markets evolve, but again, I still don't think it's the death of what we do, because the people who love it are going to keep doing it. And it's like best ball, for example. A lot of people are losing in best ball, but we all come back and play because we like it, right? It's fun. And I'm not saying that DFS isn't fun, but I think DFS 1.0, looking for that quick one-day sweat, I think there's just a lot of other options to get that.
What was it like for you? Because I assume, as you moved into a higher level position with Better Collective, that I assume oversaw more than just DFS stuff. Were you having to fight for the roto grinder side and the DFS stuff? Was that something that was getting deprioritized from a corporate level and you still had to vouch for it, or were the numbers and the subs and everything strong enough that they're no, we're content to let this continue to operate?
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in time where they're we're pulling the plug on what we're doing here. I mean, they acquired a profitable bootstrap business. We make money. We still make money. It's a good business. Now it goes back to investment long term. is the ceiling in putting money into DFS, does it make sense? Probably not, right? Like, let's face it, if the industry itself is plateaued and then there's all these other industries that are still growing, from a business side of things, putting more resources into those businesses does make sense. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with like Underdog, for example. We've seen it, like draft games are fun. We like them. Are that going to grow that business as much as prediction markets are likely to that business? No. So they're deprioritizing maybe some of their resources in those. And, it was interesting because really quick on that Underdog said like a lot of the fraud department was let go. Do we think this was like best ball fraud department, or do we think this is like financial fraud department? Like, I don't know enough about that business to realize it, but like if it was the best ball fraud department, like that exactly makes sense, because those people you can't just transition over into prediction markets, right? So I think it's look at things from what I like as a consumer to what like running a big dollar business. I understand why these things happen. I completely do. But at the end of the day, like you just have to run your business. Like I'm not like saying Underdog did the right thing, but I understand why they did what they did. And same with my company. Like, do I like that I got let go? No. Do I understand what they're trying to do from their global business? I do.
If Underdog had a large best ball fraud department, I would be pretty surprised. I don't know if you'd be like that. That would be impressive. I think
it's not the best ball fraud department. Okay. This is I will say though, that confusion speaks to, I think, a larger issue of even how the Underdog layoffs were processed by the online community, which overly indexed on the draft game specifically. And then we later learned that the draft games represented about literally like 1% of their layoffs, their total layoffs there, if that number of 125 is correct, with 2 people from the draft games being laid off. But because the draft games is what our community is obsessed with, that's our direct relationship with Underdog. You get questions like people wondering, is the money safe on this, and all of these things. Like the whole thing is like the best ball is a rounding error in the greater Underdog, financial model. They are not rug pulling, a couple $1 million from you. Like your money is safe on Underdog. That is not the issue. The issue is going back to the thing Dan talked about DFS plateauing, an investment in it to continue to grow. The lights are still on at DraftKings. The lights are still on at FanDuel. The lights will still be on Underdog. We're kind of talking about, can this space continue to grow? Can it bring in new entrants who want to do what Brian and his crew did and like start a company and start businesses and really continue to try to bet on the future of the space? That's what I think is up for the debate here.
Yeah, and I think like you definitely can. And, and I hope you didn't take it like I was shitting on what you guys are doing, Brian, because I think what you guys are doing is smart. Like there is money to be made. Now, are you going to be acquired for $30 million like Roto Grinders was, or 50 million, whatever it turned out? No, probably not. Like but can you run a great business and make money as a shareholder and have great subs and a great community? Yes. And I think like that is the exciting thing for like the entrepreneurs of the world, is like communities still work very, very well. You can build great businesses from it. Are you going to build acquirable businesses? I think that's very much up to debate. And I think like even like the DFS 2.0, like we saw Prize Picks get acquired by a European gaming company. I mean, Underdog has had a lot of investment into that company. At some point in time, those people are going to want returns. Is it going to be via IPO? Is it be via getting acquired somewhere else? So from the business side of things, in terms of what they built, they still have to have that in the back of their mind. Like, what is our exit strategy for these people who have invested into our business? Where, Brian and Nerdy and Yuta and Adam, like you guys, just like as your business grows, you guys make more money. It's great. That is absolutely the way that it should be. And honestly, you're going to run a better community that way. And communities are the important thing with communities is the people that run them need to be bought in and be in like all the time, right? And that's where, getting back to the corporate side of things, it's tough to run a community because we're all like employees in this mothership, right? Instead of feeling like I've got upside, you know, the work I'm putting in is going to pay off more in the long term because, you know, I've got revenue share potential with my other investors. And that's why you see like these Discord communities do so well, because all these guys are in there because they're sharing in growth and the upside of it. So that just kind of gets back to my larger point about like communities in a corporate world is very hard to happen, is really hard to scale, because those people, the people who are working on those sites, they normally don't share in any sort of upside in terms of like a huge corporate environment. So that's why I think the best communities are the ones that are bootstrapped and owned and operated by the people who are in the weeds in the discords and providing the content.
Yeah, Pete's big on community, so I think he definitely agree with you there. I think there's kind of like this like more randomness to this too than I think people will acknowledge. Like you were mentioning earlier about, you know, DFS is more complicated than sports betting, and like of course that's all true, but like, you know, poker is more complicated than both, really, if you're trying to play at a high level. And poker was huge, right, back in the early 2000s. Now there was less competition, and I think we're in a huge attention-seeking competition, the highest peak in human civilization for just not even gambling, just anything in society, which is going to cause problems for all sorts of businesses. But like, there's like a random, like, and then, you know, it wasn't random. Poker was essentially shut down by the government, so I wouldn't call that random. But like, of the ebbs and flows of what's popular too, there's a little bit of randomness to that. And there's the aspect of kind of this first in mover that these companies just pump dollars. Like, I mean, think about the advertising. Some of the people might be too young, of the early 2000s of Party Poker and Full Tilt. And those ads were just friggin' everywhere back in the day. And ESPN. And then there's like a symbiotic relationship between these companies and the ad dollars and promoting the content of the companies and the game or the sport or whatever, building up public interest, almost not even organically. Like, people are just like monkey see, monkey do, a big percentage of the population. Same thing happened with DFS when it was being pumped, tons of dollars being pumped into it. And like, what's the thing that's happening right now? Prediction markets, probably, right? Like, because they're pumping a ton of money into it. And I think like DFS is going to be like poker. Like, it's not going away. Its popularity will probably ebb and flow a little bit over the years, but it's just like a skill game that a certain percentage of the population enjoys. And then if they went back and pumped a whole bunch of money into it, I guarantee those numbers would spike, you know, even though the game doesn't change at all. And so like, I think it's just things you can't really control a lot of this about like what's happening, more so than like a chicken and egg type of situation. Like, what is driving what? But that's where I see prediction markets, but really because they're gonna be fighting over market share, and they're gonna be pumping a ton of money into the world to get people to sub, and so there'll be money there.
Yeah, I mean, the prediction markets are just fascinating because that world is still very much up in the air how it's going to end up, right? Like, mainly the sports aspect. I think prediction markets in general are going to live. It's just whether or not, you know, it's going to go back to the Supreme Court. They're probably going to have to decide whether or not sports can be looked at as a contract or not. And I think it's like a coin flip. I think it's like 50-50, because you have to remember the Supreme Court's the one that said, oh, states have the right to regulate sports betting. So are they suddenly going to change their mind and say, no, sports is also a contract, so therefore it can be regulated through the CFTC and nationwide? So like, you know, there are, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars coming into this market, but this is this is way riskier than I think what, as investors did when they put money into FanDuel and DraftKings, mainly because the states have a ton to lose if they lose this, right? Like if you're FanDuel or DraftKings and you get clarity that says, you can run a prediction market in New York State, there's nothing the state can do about it. Are you going to run sports betting at a 45% tax, or are you going to run prediction markets at a 0% tax? What you going to do?
Yeah.
So that is going to really dictate the direction of the industry moving forward. And I still, and believe me though, there's still going to be a lot of these other prediction markets out there. Now, do I think some of them are ridiculous and overboard? Absolutely. And I really think that there needs to be, these companies need to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, hey, we need to get our house in order here a little bit. Do we really need to offer markets on what Jeff Probst is going to say in the next episode of Survivor? What are we doing here? That's already happened. There's probably hundreds of people who know the outcome to that. Why would you run that market on a prediction market? And I think if they're not careful, they could get themselves in trouble and could, ruin it completely for everyone. So, I think it's really the early days of that. It's exciting from a kind of content side of things because there is a ton of money to be made. I mean, No Vig, who is, not a lot of people know about, what they raised $75 million a couple of weeks ago. That's a massive, massive amount of money. And you could probably say they're 5th or 6th on the list behind Kalshi and Polymarket and Crypto.com, throw in Robinhood and Coinbase and, Underdog and Prize Picks. Look how competitive this space is getting. That's the huge difference here. When FanDuel, DraftKings were coming up in DFS, it was 2 people who were getting most of that investment capital. Now it's being spread around to all of these different places. And, they're not all going to win, but the opportunity, if the tax structure is as lenient as we have it, it makes much more sense to have these many, people competing for those dollars.
It does matter if some alliances occur though. So if DraftKings gets into the prediction market and then all of a sudden they're 100% backing it, they already have these relationships built up. In Illinois, there's I think they put in 75 million, the FanDuel, DraftKings, into local elections here this cycle, which is quite a bit. So they see something happening. There's a reason for that. So it could be more the Supreme Court ruling. I just tried to find and see if they have a Kalshi on whether they will be legal. I think that would be interesting. I didn't see one. I'd like to see the line on that. I wonder if there's a chance they don't even call it and just kind of let states handle it too.
This is the problem is the states are ruling differently, right? And this is exactly the kind of position. This is kind of the exact kind of moment where, the Supreme Court would take something up is if you've got all these different jurisdictions, all these different state and federal courts, and they can't come to consensus on what the right answer is. That's when you need the Supreme Court to step up and say, okay, we need to define this one way or another, because all these states that have sports betting are going to continue to sue these prediction markets. It's going to keep happening, and we're seeing it every single day. There's new lawsuits come out, and they're trying to protect their tax revenue. So I know why they're doing it, but I just don't think we're going to get any clarity unless the Supreme Court says, and I think they're going to have to. I just think it's really going to be a close call what direction they go. Just because Trump Jr. is on all the boards at Polymarket and Kalshi and all that, in theory that helps. But a lot of these judges already made a ruling on something similar to this regarding sports betting. So they kind of have to, I don't want to say go back on their word, but in some cases, they've already made a ruling one way about where sports betting needs to be regulated. It's just whether or not it can fall into two different buckets at the same time. And I think that's the question that needs to be answered.
Yeah, I mean, well, each state also has their own state Supreme Court. And we kind of do this with other things already, like lotteries and sports betting and poker and all sorts of things where some states say it's legal, some states say it's don't. So if Kalshi wants their prediction market in Illinois and they say, hey, we got a federal license, we're releasing it to your population, pal. And then they sue, like theoretically, like they could take that to the Illinois Supreme Court and make a decision there. And then they'd be breaking Illinois law. So I don't think you have to determine this federally at the federal Supreme Court level. I don't see how it's any different.
I think the prediction markets have to, because they're saying that we need to be regulated from the CFTC, which is a national organization, right? So like a state can't, as far as I know, I'm playing lawyer here. I don't know. I'm not perfect on this front, but my understanding is you need a federal court to make that ruling, to make that decision. A state court is going to probably do what's in the state's interest one way or another. But that's where like we've seen like this go both ways. We've seen, I think in Massachusetts and Nevada, they were like ruling in favor of the states. In Tennessee, they, the latest order said, nope, Kalshi can stay open here in Tennessee until we get more, further along the judicial run of this. So it's just so
I don't know how
that's going to go.
Yeah, maybe they can take it all the way, but in practice, like in actual, like forget the legalese of whether they have the right to petition the Supreme Court since it's a federal license. Maybe they do. I don't see how it's any different than any other, gambling market where some states allow it, some states don't, and your legislature determines it. So I kind of see it going that way, honestly. That's kind of where, and who knows, maybe I'm totally wrong.
I mean, and the thing about that is I don't know that it's like the worst thing even for the sports books if that happens, because what you're going to see is, I would think, is like California and Texas legalize sports betting, right? Like if we're going to, if this is going to be allowed, but we can actually have some regulation over it from a state level, but we need to actually have a law in place around sports betting, maybe we should just end up doing that, because otherwise it's going to happen regardless, right? Like if we're saying, the state law supersedes the CFTC when it comes to sports, again, talking out of my ass, I'm not a lawyer here, but if something along those lines happened, it really would give an opportunity for those states. Okay, we got to get off the sidelines because this is happening clearly through the prediction markets. We're getting, zero state dollars from this. It's time for us to pass something. But again, I know this isn't like maybe interesting to the people in chat, but I think it's a huge dynamic of like what's happening right now in the world of like betting.
Well, I was going to say, like, let's game this out. You mentioned like 50-50 on if this can continue to, be upheld. And you have every single company pursuing this specific angle right now from a business perspective. What if it does fail? Like, is there something to be said for the company who is going around trying to get their state-by-state sports betting license being like, we're going to be the one that's actually well-positioned to operate while everyone chased this shiny thing and got the increased valuations, but then they're all rug pulled because the ruling gets overturned. And now we've at least set ourselves up to, play by the old rules. Like I'm wondering, how do things go if this does get overturned?
Yeah, well, I think that's why like FanDuel and DraftKings are hedging their bets. They're not opening prediction markets in these states with sports betting, but the ones that don't, they're going full bore. And then you've got states like BetMGM or operators like BetMGM, Bet365, who are strictly on the sidelines saying, you know what, we're just gonna continue down this path of regulated sports betting. And MGM, Caesars, I mean, they've got other gaming license potentially at risk. So it definitely makes more sense for them to go that route. But again, like to be very clear too, like I think this is strictly around sports. I think prediction markets in general are going to exist. And maybe that grows and becomes its own massive thing in its own right. Like right now, 90% of what's being wagered on these prediction markets are sports. But if sports goes away, I think the interesting thing is, what do these businesses become? I don't know if some of these VCs would pour, $500 million or so into a lot of these businesses unless they had a plan of what this can become outside of the world of like sports betting. Because right now the valuations of these businesses are bigger than freaking DraftKings is right now. So they have to be looking at these businesses as something bigger than just sports. So I don't think like prediction markets die if sports don't go their way. I think they certainly exist. But in terms of, how the spitting world, how our fantasy operators world, I mean, clearly an underdog in a prize picks, I guess they could still run, who's going to win the Oscar? What's Bitcoin going to do today? But at their best, they're serving a sports audience, right? And this is giving them an avenue to serve more of that audience in states that, don't have, sports betting laws. So I don't know. It's kind of fascinating time.
I think that's the you say chat might think it's not interesting. I think this stuff is fascinating that they could just pull off this to begin with. Even DraftKings, what DraftKings did, I think was pretty amazing for at the state level legislatively to get DFS as far as they've gotten it. And now prediction markets, like, we talked about on the podcast a few times, like, I've always been like, I think Polymarket's marketing is going a little too far. And some of their markets, like, you're just like asking to get heavy regulation from some of these markets. Like, to me, it seems overboard. But like, they're fighting some big boys, And so like, who knows how to win this, right? Like, no one has experience winning a battle like this. So like, maybe they're right. And maybe I'm way off, but it's interesting.
It's definitely interesting. I just wish they would be a little more, tactful in some of the markets they offer, have a little more clarity on how they're judging things. I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff that went on with Calcium, like, the Iranian leader, died, but I guess it was like the prediction market was, would he be replaced or something along those lines, because they don't want death to be like the thing that, like, just stay away from any kind of gray area that can exist. And then you had the thing around the Super Bowl. Oh, did Cardi B perform? Did she not perform? Yeah. And she was on stage, she danced, she didn't really sing. So like, I just think they just need to button themselves up in terms of how they offer markets and what markets they offer. And if they do that, I think they'll be in a good space. But like, there's going to be a time where, they're going to be called out on some of this stuff, and they're going to be asked, like, what is the importance of knowing, what words an announcer is going to say in the Bucks Nets game today, right? Like, you can, is the word swish, is the word lottery, is the word foul going to be said by a broadcaster? Like, why are we offering that? Just seems so ripe for manipulation. And it just seems unnecessary in a business that has so many eyeballs on it to just like go to that extreme right now. And I know innovation, you have to be aggressive sometimes. I remember early days of DFS, Brian, and I'm not sure if you remember this, but like, remember when DraftKings offered NASCAR and golf, and they're like, oh, these things are not legal by the letter of the law. And DraftKings basically wrote a way that they interpreted that it was. And I think that actually helped them gain market share over like FanDuel in those early days of DFS. But this just feels very different because there's, this is not a little niche game like DFS was. This is a, huge talking points by legislators all over the U.S. right now.
Well, it reminds me of, I was listening to the Risk Takers podcast, which, Brian and I have referenced a few times, and we had sports predictions on as well, but they had a kid on their show in the past month who's just crushing it on, I think it's Kalshi or Polymarket, one of the two, but he was even talking about like when he saw that they were trying to be able to offer a market for the college transfer portal. And like the NCAA is like absolutely pissed off about it. And it's like the liquidity and the volume that you're going to make on that market cannot be worth the additional scrutiny from these big organizations. It's like you have such a good thing going. Even like high profile, high volume players are like, don't fuck this up with these dumb markets that aren't even essential to your business model. But this is like full blown heat check mode for these prediction markets. So they're like, we can just do whatever the fuck we want.
The crazy thing about that is that'll be referenced time and time again. And they actually never offered the market. They just wanted to certify to be able to offer the market. So they self-certified the market, but never actually offered it. So like eventually this is going to go in front of a lawmaker's desk and it's going to talk about how, oh, they did this. They never did it, but I think they probably would have if they weren't called out on it before they actually posted the market. Because I think
that's the Trump administration playbook. You trial balloon something crazy, kind of gauge the reaction, and then decide what you actually want to do.
There's also like kind of two aspects to this. So there's the like, what would you do if you're an emerging market in a company? And then just like the moral aspect. So like let me ask you a question, Dan. Do you think it's okay to bet on the WWE?
I mean, I'm a libertarian. I think people should be able to do what they want with their money. So like I side a little bit more on that front, but it's also like the Jeff Probst thing that I referenced. Like clearly people know the answer. You're betting into a market that is already predetermined. Like for me, like that should be the line, is if something is predetermined, forget about it. Like we cannot take wagers on something that has already happened. You know, what's Mr. Beast's next video going to be? Okay. Or what's he going to say in his next video? Don't do that one. Now, if you want to say, will Mr. Beast's next video get over 30 million views by XYZ date? Totally legit in my eye. Now, I think it's a dumb thing to bet on, but nobody has the exact answer to that question today. Where you should, in my eyes, the line is very clearly, if somebody has an answer to it, shouldn't be offering it. And
so the WWE, yes, but because it's live, is what you're saying.
I mean, that's where it's a little bit closer, a little tougher discussion because it is live, right? Like, I still probably say no to that, but that's a tougher one. That's a tougher one. Okay. I don't feel strongly one way or another. Not nearly as bad as like, you know, clearly things that have already happened versus predetermined things that are live. That I could probably get behind that a little bit.
I like it. I like stuff like that. Well, not like, I mean, I just don't care. Like if you want to bet on WWE, you know, go do it. And also I think you can be smart and make money off of predetermined outcomes. If you know what you're doing. So, and even without insider information. So I want them to keep doing it. I don't want them to get in trouble though. So that's why I'm saying there's two different aspects. I don't want them to ruin the whole industry, but just in general, I'm for it. But I did finally find a market I am opposed to. I honestly, I would have said there's a very small chance you'll find me being opposed to anything. And I just saw it and I said it to Pete the other day. You could bet on Kelce right now, the cases of measles in the U.S. And I was like, okay, I cannot.
That's where you
I
draw
don't think
the
I
line.
can get behind this fucking Kelce. What are you, an infectious disease? And I was taking this a little further in my head, of course, right? And I'm like, God, you know, like, because like criminals, they're stupid. They have a lower IQ on average. That's why they get caught. Their crimes are usually really dumb. They could probably be more productive, making more money in other aspects of life, but they don't realize it. And now there's AI though. And so some idiot can be like, I know somebody who has the measles. What would be the best way to, you know, increase this? And it's like, it's just so easy now to cause a huge problem. So like, I finally found a market I oppose, and infectious disease markets. I will be brave enough, Pete, to say I think we shouldn't have those.
Yeah, you know, it seems like that would be good.
I can care less if you bet on The Rock beating, Brock Lesnar. Yeah. I can care less.
What do you? Well, another thing that I've been thinking about, and obviously one of the main things that makes news with prediction markets right now is how stuff is graded in the way the fine print is written in these things. And there's been lots of dust ups. You mentioned the Cardi B, there was the recent, Iranian thing or whatever. We're talking about this through the lens of like, oh, sports betting's so easy. You just make a pick and compare that to salary cap DFS or whatever. Like at a certain point, if there continues to, be these seeds of distrust that I'm making a bet, and even if I'm right, I'm not going to actually get paid out, like that has to hurt them long term, just like as a concept there as well. And also, do you know what doesn't sound fun to me when I go to make a bet? To have to ask a lawyer or a large language model to read the fine print and make sure I know exactly what I'm betting. Like, do you see these as like barriers for this actually become a frictionless, enjoyable user experience for people who do just want to sports bet or predict on things?
My feeling is no, because I think they're just crazy not to clean all this up, right? Like they've got the means to do better. And I think what you guys have kind of said is like, it's the Wild West right now. It's trying to get your brand out there, build as much liquidity as you can, stretch the rules the best you can. But I think at some point in time, somebody's going to look at this and be like, okay, like, especially after the air is all cleared about what we can and can't do. And I think there will be more guardrails even put out by the CFTC here in the not too distant future. And I think that will help. But what those are, I mean, it's hard to say because, the guy who's in charge of the CFTC, I mean, it's Trump appointed. Like, obviously Trump Jr. has a lot of, I'm guessing, stock in these companies, considering he's on the board of multiple of them. But like, let's just be reasonable here and do things the right way. If you're going to run a business, if you're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, like you gotta clean things up. So I think it will get cleaned up. I don't think it's going to ruin it here short term because it's still like such early days of this. But Brian, like you talked about before, like all this stuff kind of comes in waves. Like I don't know if prediction markets are going to be huge in 5 years from now. It could be something else. I mean, Top Shot was massive for a while. Don't need to remind Pete of that. Like it was like the craziest thing for a while, and now people aren't in on it. Meme coins, same thing. Like, I mean, certainly there's a lot of people still trading it, still into that world, but something else always seems to come along to distract people. So is this going to be like, I think they're looking at it like stock trading, basically 24/7, being able to get a sweat and risk on something. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I just don't think it's defined of like how big it's going to get. But hopefully these guys just, I hate to use the term get some adults in the room, but like get some adults in the room and clean things up a little bit.
It's that game of power too, though, of what is legal and what is not legal. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But like for the practical aspects of it, like that we would use. My take on these prediction markets is that from the sports betting angle is that they're going to end up more like the head-to-head lobbies did in the poker world, where there's just like the 10 best players posting the head-to-heads and like you have to play them or you can't play anybody. And that's kind of what prediction markets I feel like will eventually get to. You're going to have the best guy who makes the Milwaukee Bucks props for the, like for daily. That's all he does. He makes the Bucks props and he's fucking awesome at it. Where if you want to bet on DraftKings, they're putting up hundreds of thousands of lines that stink, like, cause they want novelties and people just, firing off, and a lot of them aren't sharp. And that's why you could beat DraftKings for a brief time before they limit you. But at least you can do that. And I kind of see prediction markets going that direction. I do love it. I love the idea that you could buy and sell your shares. You don't have to sit there and
and they give you a real price. Like they give you the actual price. Like there's just nothing worse than getting an early cash out and you're like, you got to be kidding me. Like this isn't even close to the value of that. Like I do love that, but I disagree with you a little bit in that, like, I don't think I'm going to be able to be posting that many markets on Polymarket or on DraftKings or on FanDuel. I mean, I think this idea that it's truly peer-to-peer, I mean, you're looking at these massive market makers who are providing the liquidity for these markets. It's not, me and you, Brian. So, like, we're not the ones that are going to be setting the lines here. It's going to be the offshoot market making division of DraftKings or the offshoot market making division of FanDuel who are doing these. It's not in a real world like you're talking about. I agree with you. That would be awesome if that was the way it was, but it's never going to be that way because you're never going to get the only way to get the liquidity of markets is to have these massive market makers who have the best algorithms out there in the world, basically setting these lines for everything. And we're already starting to see it. So that's where I in theory, you're right, but in the way that this is going to scale, I think it's impossible for it to work out that way.
It's interesting. Because I think the top leaderboard people on Kalshi now are people. Like Rufus is up there. And if they're on Kalshi and like DraftKings is posting those lines, DraftKings can't limit anybody. Right. Now the reason they just can't be that good, I don't think, at posting hundreds of thousands of lines.
Well, I think it's going to be, I don't know that it's going to be hundreds of thousands that they post, but I mean, you're already seeing it with I think Susquehanna, maybe VC is like, or I think they're the one who are doing a lot of the market making on Kalshi right now. I mean, these aren't Joe Blows who are setting these lines on these.
Yeah, well, I'm saying Joe Blows is bad. I think you misunderstood. I was saying the opposite. So like it's not Joe Blow. It's the greatest, market individual sports bettor of all time you're betting against his best lines for the day that he gets banned by DraftKings for.
So you tell me like DraftKings will just pay this guy to be their market maker for Bucks lines?
No, I don't know. Like Rufus posted a PGA line for this week, right? And that's the PGA market. And that if DraftKings can beat it, they could bet it, I guess. But like Rufus isn't going to post, the Chinese basketball lines, right? But you don't want to bet in his PGA lines, do you?
No, but how do I know that I'm betting into Rufus?
Well, because he'll have the best lines of the lines that everyone's betting into. Like if some Joe Blow guy posts some Scotty Scheffler plus 1400 or something, and he just gets hammered, all his liquidity gets bought up and it's gone.
Yeah, and so I don't think your average person is going to be doing that. I think your average person is just going to be they're just going to be going into what's already provided, and I just don't know that they'll even let Rufus do it. To be honest with you, I think they'll be the ones that are posting their peach, and if Rufus wants to pick them off, go right ahead. That's really no difference than what we're seeing, except that you get limited, right? So like that's the point I'm making. I just don't know that the users themselves are going to be able to post all that many markets to get picked off. Because
you think they're going to ban users from posting on Kalshi?
I mean, I just don't know how long they're going to last if they're like, just from a liquidity standpoint. Like I don't want to say ban, but
because right now they're incentivizing it, right? So because there's makers and takers. And if you're a maker, you don't pay any VIG right now on Kalshi. So they're incentivizing trying to get liquidity from these professional sports bettors.
Well, that's smart. I mean, that's smart to get the liquidity from them.
Well, yeah. I mean, not if you're going to ban them a year from now.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Kind of lame maneuver. That's a bold claim, Dan.
I mean, I don't know that. And again, this is long from being determined. What's going to happen here? Don't put my words and say it's definitively what's going to happen. I just know that like when you have this many different places that are going to be offering markets, there's only so much liquidity to go around in all these places.
Yeah. I don't think they're good at making lines. A lot of these companies, I think they copy these lines and their retails and they ban people. I don't think a lot of them have interest in getting sharp. So
And
I don't
fully-
know. I think it's going to be the Rufus Peabodys of the world, and also in these for a while at least. And these calcium markets too. The thing that sucks about them is like go look at the prop markets. There's like not many of them. Like they're probably pretty good, and they pull them down really fast, right? Like so, like these guys know what they're doing. And like, just think about it. Like if you did run a sports book and you could have one guy on one market, like this is just be good at the Bucks props. Like your team's going to be so good. And that's kind of what they do. They outsource it. They're outsourcing it to all these motivated and properly incentivized through the VIG distribution and that profit motive for themselves. Those are going to be some sharp goddamn lines where if you're betting on DraftKings or a retail book, yeah, you're going to get limited, but there's a whole bunch of crap on there that if you have half a brain, you can figure out, you can get some plus EV bets down.
And there's a lot of arbitrage happening right now in these prediction markets too. There is a lot of people who are printing, printing coming in and out of markets left and right at just astounding clips. And especially in today's world where it's like easier than ever to build tools to do this kind of stuff with AI tools, AI coding, that I'm sure there are groups out there that are just making a mint right now in that world.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the AI stuff because that was another hard thing to untangle with what's happening. Because obviously, even in industries outside of the fantasy space right now, there's been a ton of huge layoffs. There was the Jack Dorsey company one that made headlines and a ton others. And they attribute a lot of that to AI. Like, hey, knowledge workers are at risk. There's a lot of economists who think within the next 12 to 16 months that like massive percentages of jobs could be cut. How much do you think, like the underdog and even the quote that Jeremy gave to whoever it was, front office sports or whatever, like only referenced prediction markets. He didn't reference AI or anything like that. And I don't know how, if anything was different with Better Collective, but do you think AI is also impacting how some of these big fantasy companies think about stuff?
Probably. I mean, I think AI is going to have a massive effect on everybody. Like it's definitely not just related to fantasy. But I also feel like, in theory, AI is going to make things, much more competitive. It's way easier to build tools today than it used to be. You don't have to be a 20-year coder to do stuff. You can catch up really quick using Codex, Claude Code, all these other, options out there. So, I think, we're just going to have so many different options from that aspect of things. And it's like, you still need people to know somewhat what they're doing. But at the end of the day, like, I think the biggest thing, and I've got a 17 and 13-year-old, and it's like, I swear a day doesn't go by when they're talking about what I want to do when I get older. And like, keep on going through my head, like, okay, well, in 5-10 years, like, what does the world look like? Like, what is the job for you to have that cannot be replaced? And it's hard because the speed that AI is moving right now is crazy. Just year over year, what's it going to be in 5 years from now? It's really hard to quantify what exactly is going to happen. But I think it's a part of every industry, including the fantasy industry. I mean, from a content perspective, I think you can usually tell when things are written in AI. There's not nearly as authentic in terms of the voice that is being written, but AI is getting so good, you could give them 10 examples of an article that somebody writes by a human and say, write it in, moving forward, write them in this similar style using this data. So like, and it'll be great. And especially in like 5 years from now, it'll be really, really great. So AI is going to have an effect on everything, but even in our, your world, Pete, like, making thumbnails. How easy is it to make thumbnails these days using some of the AI options out there? At least I would think it's pretty easy. I've seen what the visuals they can create. It's pretty freaking good right now. Where before, you needed to, spend 20, 30 minutes doing these things, where I think they can take, 20 or 30 seconds if you have the right prompt.
How do we know Pete isn't AI right now, Dan? After that, what if
Well,
your son? Go ahead.
I know. I was going to say, I thought for a second, because there were a few chats that came in back to back. Met Dan at the New York DFS protest, fine act, was interviewed by Dan a few years back and met in Vegas. Great guy. And I'm like, this is a little suspicious. Did Dan have his AI agents bombard the chat with pro-Bach propaganda there?
I will say this. I want to give this is cheesy and all, but I really want to say this because, with what happened to me a couple of weeks ago, out at Roto Grinders, made a post, let the world know. All the outpouring of support I got from everybody was just insane to me. And not too many times in your life do you actually get into a moment where you have people reflect on what you've done in life. Usually that happens when you're dead.
I know.
So for it to happen when I'm still alive, it softened the blow so much. I can't say thank you enough. I couldn't reply, obviously, to every single person who wrote something nice, but the humanity, and it was great to see, especially on Twitter, which can be a cesspool at times where everybody wants to hate on everyone else. It was something that really meant a lot to me and really made me feel good about myself and the job that I did. And sometimes people will say, what does this really mean when you give somebody a compliment? It can mean the world. And I just really want to not trivialize that and just say thank you to everybody who did have something nice to say. You didn't have to do it, but it did make me feel good in a moment where I was pretty low.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, everyone's been feeling, this past week, especially, and starting with your layoff of like, man, like if one of the OGs in the space who helped grow it and pioneer and push us forward, both content and business and quite literally protesting to keep the games alive, like if he doesn't have a space in this industry, what does that mean for all of us? And so I think it was both, a moment to say thank you and also a sobering moment because so many of us, and I've seen the sentiments in my chats and in Discord, like people are nervous, like they love draft games. And I do want to talk about that a little bit more. And they love these games that are more complex than just putting together an SGP. That's why they're drawn to them. They're the people who want to put a puzzle together instead of, just flipping coins or whatever. And so I think there's a lot of fear right now of what that means for these games that we all love so much if, the big corporations no longer, feel like they can invest in them smartly.
Yeah. And I mean, invest in, they're not going anywhere. Like, I don't think best ball is suddenly not going to be offered by Underdog and DraftKings. And I mean, the thing about best ball, which is, I think, such an underrated aspect, and I know, Pete, you make fun of it every week on the Swolecast with the Geico Insurance GPP of the week on DraftKings. But you're on an app when you're drafting these teams for like 30, 35 minutes. Like, time spent on app matters. Like, you talk about engagement. There is not anything more engaging from a product side of things, I think, than drafting best ball. And I'm really surprised there wasn't more commercial agreements done on the Underdog side to bring in more corporate sponsors with these best ball drafts. I feel like it's a lost opportunity. Now, is it a huge needle mover in the monetary side of things? Maybe not, but it should be looked at as an ancillary opportunity for you to make money on this platform that clearly a lot of people love and there's massive engagement with. And, maybe this is something Underdog can look into to maybe revitalize the draft games a little bit. I mean, even on Fantasy Life, you guys have corporate sponsors on a lot of the stuff you guys do. Mike's Hard Lemonade, I think, was one this year. There's, you go to ESPN app, you open up your fantasy football, you've got Miller Lite, Bud Light, across the screen. Like, I feel like the commercial opportunities that Underdog hasn't gotten into, and maybe rightfully so, in the name of like building great product. People don't like to be, hit up with ads at all time. But I think all of us would be okay with it if we're like, hey, there's, they're putting it back into the product. They're increasing prize pools. They're doing more with it. And again, it's not a huge amount of money, but it certainly is not, nothing. And
Right.
I think with the engagement metrics that these games have, they should be able to sell that pretty well.
I would happily play in draft in the puppy presented by Sizzler if that meant hiring more engineers for the draft games team.
Puppy
That's
provided
a
by
trade-off that seems
Chewy,
easy.
right? I see it in chat. Like that is the perfect.
There you go.
That is the
Provided by
perfect thing. Puppy provided by Chewy. Like,
Yeah.
why not? Like it fits, and I think it's an interesting way to kind of add another element of like revenue to your business. That because I've seen like ad dollars that some of our properties we're getting on, especially some of the larger scaled ones, and there's real money involved on advertising. So, hopefully Underdog DraftKings kind of does that a little bit already, but I think it's an avenue for them to put into those games.
There's been this I don't want to say myth, but thought, let's say, in our universe for about 6-7 years now, especially since sports betting is getting so big. Tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it goes something like this, and I disagree with it, which is like, oh, sports betting's coming around, so now they're just going to do that because it makes more money than DFS or best ball, and so they're just going to put. Now, we all, like you just said, it would be great if they pump some more money into these products because we like them, we enjoy them, and we want more people playing them because the prize pools will be bigger, etc. But to me, like it's like a zero-sum argument that doesn't make any sense. It's like because like there's companies like Amazon exist and Sears used to exist, and like these companies that do a whole bunch of things. There's no reason Underdog can't do prediction markets and best ball. There's no reason that DraftKings can't do sports betting and DFS. Do you agree with me?
100%. I mean, DraftKings came out and said we've got our super app where you can bet, you can do predictions, you can do lottery, you can play casino, play DFS, like you can do all this on a singular app. And that's kind of been, I feel like what Jeremy's whole thing has been on Underdog is we want to build games that people are interested in playing on sports. And I think some of this is changed a little bit in terms of like, tax structure on sports betting versus prediction markets and engagement that you get. I mean, let's face it, like all of that, like I use Underdog so much, and I'm a huge like day-to-day draft guy. But like, if I've got money in there because I'm playing best ball, it's keeping me engaged to look at other things. And I think there's just maybe like cross promoting things that we can potentially work on that could, try and get people to cross over, because there's no question. Like, think of it this way. The amount of money they make on Best Ball Madness. What I haven't done the math on it. I don't know what the rake is. Somebody probably has done it. But for how long this runs, what's from April through the end of the football season, what is that, like 2 weeks of DFS? Is that like in terms of like the rake that they would get on like a Millie Maker type situation, right? Like what DraftKings makes in the Millie Maker, Underdog in 2 to 3 weeks, it takes how many months? Just kind of just shows you how low a margin that this game really is. And that doesn't even get into the side of like, when you're taking wagers or whatnot, on like a prediction market. So like you do have to look at the economics of it, and especially in a business that eventually wants to grow and exit and make their shareholders, whole for the investment that they put in their business. I get it all. But I'm with you, Brian. You can do all this stuff, and I don't think they're going to stop doing all this stuff. So anybody that's kind of had this, it's the end of days. It's not the end of days. Now, with that said, I kind of want to bring up what Jack Settleman brought up the other day about like, oh, why don't we just spin up a community, draft game site? And I just think doing that is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult without liquidity. And the best way to get liquidity is by advertising. And yes, social media is an amazing thing. You can have a lot of people who have followings, and you could probably build an app way easier today than you could when Underdog started 10 years ago, right? But if you don't have these games filling, because we all know there's nothing worse than when you enter a contest and you're waiting minutes, hours, days to fill. It's a horrible experience. It's the one thing you don't want, but it's the most important thing. And it's the most expensive thing to do is get customers. So that's why I just don't know how feasible, that is. Like, I think that's why like FanDuel DraftKings and Underdog are so positioned so well, is because they have this player liquidity to do this. Now, if I was Underdog, again, just unsolicited advice, because I'm nobody, talk about how much money DraftKings can make on a Millie Maker on Thursday Night Football. I'm kind of surprised that Underdog hasn't built a game that allows you to do that. And when I say this too, that's scalable, because the reason that DraftKings can do it is because of the optimizers, because of the sims. People can build 100 lineups super quick. Doesn't exist right now in the draft format that you have on Underdog. And I think that is something that if I was running that business, I'd look at it and say, okay, how can we kind of scale our game, still keep what we're doing, but also try and make more money in this fantasy space? And I've always felt like, even though it's not the ethos of, peer versus peer draft games, it's a way for you to still get people come into your app to maybe play for $500,000 on a Thursday night. And I don't think it can really happen in the kind of the current format that they have set up on their daily draft games. Just my take.
Well, I wonder though, does it just get back to the same thing of like, okay, yeah, say we even got to the point where we're making the same amount of money on draft games as DraftKings is on salary cap. Like say we crack that nut with new game types, or maybe they just offer salary cap or whatever. Is it still like this represents such a fraction of what we can make in this bigger prediction market sports betting sandbox that it's not even worth it to increase our revenue in this domain? Like, why not just apply all of our leverage to this one thing?
Probably, but I mean, and I think a good example.
I'm playing devil's advocate. I want to live in that reality you just described.
The proof is in the. What did FanDuel do? FanDuel acquired Draft. Okay, FanDuel acquired Underdog before Underdog was Underdog. That Draft in their portfolio. Sports betting came about. What did they do? They just got rid of it altogether and said, we're going to focus on sports betting. And what did they become? The largest sports betting company in the United States and arguably the world. So I'd say they probably made the right investment there to like cut bait on draft games at the time to focus on sports betting. I don't think Underdog is going to clearly do that, just because I think it's different times and the way that their business is run. But in terms of like investing in the upside, like, yeah, like you're probably right, Pete. But I'm trying to be a little bit of an optimist to be like, okay, how can they grow their draft games from a monetary side of things? And I still think there's ways to do it, but it might just be against kind of what they've always done somewhat. Because the thing is, you can add more game types, but they inevitably eat into each other, right? Like that's part of the problem, I think, is you want to offer more, but are you growing the pie? Or is somebody going from this bucket into another bucket?
Well, that's what I do think, looking to DraftKings, because DraftKings in the evolution of their draft games and what it represents for their business model is a lot further along than Underdog. And I just saw a Justin Freeman tweet about their F1 prize pools for the first race of the year. And I think I saw it was like first place $20K. And I don't know what it used to be, but Justin made it seem like it had been nuked. Essentially, he's like, this is the coffin for the sport. And you think about that, it kind of goes back to this idea of, yeah, the lights are still on. DraftKings is happy to post F1 DFS for whoever wants to play it. But if you have the influencers and the hardcore people who can't even get excited about the prize pool, and DraftKings isn't like working with sites to drum up things or paying content creators or doing promotions around it, then it's like almost what is even the point? And I think that's where you worry about things are going. Like, yeah, you can always press new on that contest, but is there going to be the interest, the prize pools, the liquidity? And it doesn't have to be a full two-way street, but you got to meet them a little bit there and incentivize and make this a thing, as opposed to, yeah, we turned on the lights in the gym for you. You can go shoot hoops for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, but I also think like DraftKings and maybe an Underdog now, they're using these draft games as a means to build their user base, right? Not necessarily to make the most amount of money from it. They're doing it to get them into the other things that they're offering, whether it's today or tomorrow. I mean, there's a reason that FanDuel and DraftKings won in sports betting in the US. It's because they had all these customers already onboarded onto their site, and it was very simple to flip that switch, and especially when they were way ahead on tech compared to like the betting incumbent like Caesars and BetMGM. I mean, it was very clear. It was not a, I think a hard prediction to see that these teams were going to win. So I still think like that exists. They probably don't onboard by advertising these things, but if they've got, I don't know, 3,000 users who like F1, and the only place to play F1 is on DraftKings, that's still a net win for them. Now, the contests, yeah, like you got to scale them accordingly. They're not in the business of losing money. They're not going to overlay these things. This isn't the early days of DFS where overlay was your advertising dollars. Mm-hmm. But that's why, like, I mean, even like Prize Picks the other day, I was going through Prize Picks and they offer badminton. like, are you serious? Like, there's fantasy badminton. It's like clearly they like some places are just trying to get as many people in a specific thing and then serve them, hey, well, you came for this, but we also have this. And I think it goes to Brian's point about like having more options. Like that's what these things like DraftKings Super App, it's exactly where I think all these things are going.
Back to like the settlement point where you were talking about, can we all get together and just make our own thing? This idea has happened a million times over a million years, and it's possible. It's really hard, but like leaving that aside, this specific industry, there is so many roadblocks legislatively and legally, and the financial system with like holding money and stuff like that. There's a barrier. This is probably the biggest barrier to entry industry besides like maybe like insurance, something medical, maybe. I don't know. There's others, but it's up there. And so like, good luck to you. And that makes me think about this Underdog, this last bit of Underdog here you guys are talking about. It's still a risk for Underdog, right? Maybe they fail. Maybe they're the worst of the prediction markets. I think they're a good company, and I don't hope that, but they could be wasting a ton of money and maybe focusing on some new DFS version or better best ball would have been a better long-term play. So it's not like without risk. I think the reason that Underdog best ball, generally speaking, is interesting. One of the aspects of it is it's visually interesting. You could stream it. It streams well. It's entertaining. DFS is not. Sports betting's even worse. Prize Picks is bad. No one wants to see your stupid prize. Maybe they give me the slip, give me the picks. Yeah, sure. That's like 5 seconds of content, but you could stream best ball for 3 hours and get thousands and thousands of views, obviously, right? So like that is something that they should possibly consider leaning into. I would say, we're giving Underdog advice here, but like they're a great company, but yeah,
right. Like, they're not run by very smart people. They built an amazing business. Like we certainly know that. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But I want to say, I do want to give a bit of kudos here. And I didn't know that it would be possible. And they haven't hit scale at all. But like what Matt Kelly's done with Fast Fantasy, with the player profiler in that group, is pretty impressive. They've only been around a couple of years, and you nailed it. Like the licensing that goes into it, easily one of the hardest things for any startup to go through. And, they're not anywhere near the level of liquidity that you have, but they're building something in the draft game space, which, I don't know, building to be acquired, or if they're just building to, hey, we want to build a profitable business. We'll take our distributions, every 6 months. I mean, to me, like that's the better outcome for somebody in this world. Is like, if you want to build for scale and try and be acquired, I think that's a fool's errand right now in the world of fantasy sports. It's not going to happen. Can you build a nice business? Sure. but there's still a lot of costs that go involved, whether it's player liquidity, whether it's live scoring. Like, I mean, I remember Underdog just getting dragged for a while because like, oh, you know, the live updates on these is slow. And I guarantee you they paid a lot more money to get that updated than any of us even realized, because these data providers, they kind of got a monopoly on all this stuff. So it's not cheap. And especially when you're a large company, a large venture company, or a publicly traded company, the people who own the rights to these data, they know that. And you're billed accordingly, to say the very least.
Yeah. No, and I think it goes to what we were talking about at the beginning too, of like, you know, if you're content just having, you know, a bootstrapped company that's community driven, and, you know, maybe you're a $5 million a year company. Or maybe if you are building an app or draft games, you're okay being just a $50 million company. It's just like, there's this element to life. And I think Brad and I have even talked about it before too, where people always want more. There's the Sahil Bloom did the research of like, he pulled all these people in his life and averaged it out, and every single one wanted 30% more money than their current net worth, no matter if they were worth 10 million or worth $100,000. Like, and I think there's that element with companies too, where it's like, okay, we built this thing, like we make $5 million a year. Okay, how do we get to make 20 million a year? Like, and so then along the way, you lose the thing that you love. It's just funny how that works. And obviously Underdog, when they made the decision to go from $100 million company to $1 billion company, that changed everything.
Yeah, because you've got these investors who expect a return, right? Like that's why and if you're a bootstrap, it's all up to you. And that's where, like, you know, look at ETR, for example, like these, you know, owned and operated by the guys at ETR. That gives them way more flexibility about what they want that business to become. And, you know, is it an acquirable business? I don't know. Probably could be if they wanted it to, but who knows whether they want it to. I'd probably say they more than likely don't. And I've been honest with these guys too. Like, if I was going to make an acquisition, I don't know if that's one that I would go with, because they're so driven by the personalities who own the company, right? And that's what makes that company great, is you've got Andrew Wiggins and Adam Levitan and the guy doing these streams on Sunday morning, invested into their product. And if they sell, and if you buy a company up, who knows whether you're going to have that. And does that go away after acquisition? And that's where, like, you know, sometimes just being in the weeds, building an awesome business, you know, growing, you know, other stars along the way. So therefore you don't have to pull the weight, everything, you know, that's just kind of like great organic growth. But, you know, when you are, you know, set up and you are personality driven, like, it's really difficult to like if I was like an acquiring company, it makes it really hard to go that route. Where if you've got tools, you've got IP, you've got a lot of stuff that, you know, and that's where I think Roto Grinders did it well. Like, we definitely made a pivot more towards the tools. And it did give us something that was like, okay, like if the community aspect maybe falls a little bit, we've got this to fall back on. We've got all these subscribers who love our tools, who come to our site for weather, who come to our site for lineups. Like, we've got a lot of other things rather than just personalities. And I think that's like, you know, if you're a VC or private equity or somebody who's looking to buy things, like they have to do that. And like ETR is an unbelievable business, but is it one that's going to get acquired? It would be a tough sell for me if I was on the other side, because the moment that Levitan leaves or Silva leaves or Wiggins leaves, what is that business?
Yeah, which is kind of like the Barstool thing, right? I mean, they don't really have any
100%.
tools, or it's all personality driven, and they built like a content empire. And they even tried to get in the sports betting thing with the app and kind of own their own thing, and that just blew up. And it was like, okay, let's just get back to content. Nobody does it better than us. Let's just do that.
And look at what happened. Like, I guarantee you that Portnoy said, if you don't only back this company for like nothing, I'm going. And Big Cat's going. And Penn looked at it and said, oh my goodness, like, this will legitimately die in due time if we don't have these guys. That's why he leveraged to buy that company back for next to nothing. It's because it wasn't worth anything to anybody else, because those guys weren't going to go along with it if it was suddenly spun out into something that they didn't have ownership in. That's a great example, Pete.
We live in a different world, different time now too. That's kind of like, what's the Richard Gere Julia Roberts movie, Pretty Woman, right? Yeah. Where like the 80s mindset of you buy up a company and you sell it piece by piece, like that type of it's like we live in like Etsy and Uber and AI, and like it's a huge opportunity for people to start their own company, and you don't need to get bought out anymore. Like, and you could still get investors. Technically, ETR could fundraise and just try to grow for some reason. I don't think they need to, honestly, but I kind of see it as an opportunity more than it's like, oh, how can we get bought by Apple? Which was pretty much the mindset of Silicon Valley and 80s culture, but it's definitely changing.
I mean, I can attest to this. This was my life. Like, I started the podcast on RG, and I said to myself, okay, this is a great idea for a podcast on daily fantasy. I can start this tomorrow, and nobody will find it. Nobody will know who I am. There's no means for me to monetize this, even if I really did get an audience. Where today, it's the complete opposite. Like, to be able to create, to be your own creator and monetize that, it is easier than ever before. So like years ago, I needed to go to Roto Grinders. I gave them a great pitch, and it worked out great for both of us. Like, we were an awesome, couldn't be happier with the outcome that happened. But that was also in 2010, 2011. Like, that's a long time ago. Like, today, you don't need to do that. Like, you've got to hustle yourself. There are ways to get your podcast noticed, your videos noticed. And I think it's a really good time to be an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, and don't necessarily need to raise capital to reach, really, really great goals. So, yeah, I'm totally in alignment with that.
And not to mention, like, it's the idea of, you see what happens with a lot of these companies, right? And why these layoffs sting. It's because times are good, money's coming in, you're trying to grow. And so you're hiring. Yeah. And then things change. The meta changes, AI, prediction markets, whatever. And you have to scale back. And man, I do not envy those people who have to go and let people off because they owe their shareholders, a better business model. And like, I think about that constantly with my stuff. Like, would I love to invest in a full-time video editor? I think that would be the highest leverage thing I could personally invest in. And could I maybe forecast it for a year or two? But then what happens if some of my income streams dry up, or I have a down year or whatever? And it's like, I can't pay 100% of what I'm making to my video editor, and then I have to lay them off. And like, that kind of stuff I think about, and why I try to stay so lean with my operations, because I never even want to get in that position, even if it means I'm sacrificing maybe a bigger nugget down the road.
You're not ready to be a corporate honcho there, Pete. Like,
no, I've had conversations too with people like at the companies I work with, Fantasy Life and Underdog, and asking me if I'd be interested in these positions or, running content teams. Or I'm just like, absolutely not. Like, absolutely. I don't want it. I just want to make some content. I'm content making a decent living. If I don't ever get rich, that's completely fine with me. I don't need those headaches.
There's only so much. I said this with Run the Sims. Like, there's only so many ways to split a $20 subscription. Like, there's not a lot to go around. And so, like, when you're like, hey, should we do this? Should we pay for this subscription? Should we hire this? It's like, yeah, we could do that, but then now we got to split it another way, or we got to, now you're making like $1, or $2, like at a certain point. So like for some of the smaller sports, like, well, we talk behind the scenes is like, how could we do this without like, with using AI only, because it's not worth it to go the traditional routes of hiring data providers and all this other stuff. Cause they charge a lot.
They do. And that was one thing where I felt like, and still do, like RG, I think is a bit of an advantage is that like, they project a lot, and, that team is incredible. I think they don't get enough credit for the job that they do. But the one thing that I made a very big point of when I was there is the work that we do isn't just for DFS. It's got to feed Action Network, Vegas Insiders. There's all these other sports betting properties. So we need to, the work that we do today might feed our DFS models, but it also needs to feed other sports betting models and these other sites and other content out there. And that gives, it's a little bit easier to make that investment to say, hey, we're gonna do full blown NHL projections or League of Legends projections or something. If we've got like esports in the portfolio of the company, it gives you more leeway to do some of those things. But that was something that I always felt was super important, was to find a place for us in the company that wasn't just fantasy, where we're feeding other things. And kudos to them, like they definitely lived up to that investment. That team remains super strong and they do a great job. And I think that's something I'm really proud of, though, is being able to like find meaning for our business outside of just DFS. So if what you're talking about, DFS is plateauing, let's just get rid of, no, you can't get rid of those guys. They're providing X, Y, and Z to like 10 different businesses in the organization. So trying to insulate some of their positions longer term. And I think it worked out pretty well. And those guys absolutely crush it. So kudos to them.
If I'm Dan back, 6 months ago, I'm going, okay. And I have that mindset you just described. I'm going, okay, we have to do prediction market stuff. Did you think about that?
Definitely have thought about it. I think the larger problem is, especially into my org, because it was easy for me to do DFS stuff that fit the blueprint of sports betting. And I think it somewhat can apply to prediction markets. You'll probably see some of that moving forward on these platforms, but prediction markets is so broad. There's so much going on with it. I feel like it's its own thing. So I don't think if somebody asked me to do it, I'd figure it out. I wasn't ready to necessarily push the envelope on there until, I was asked, because I don't really know where that's going to end up when it's all said and done anyway.
It's such a massive thing. Like I wouldn't know where to start. Like you can see it, right? It's like a blurry image. It'll come into focus eventually, like what people want, how they're interacting with it. Mm-hmm. But to start right now, like I'm trying to think what I would want to consume. I think I would read an article that was like, the 10 craziest markets I saw, and seeing someone, riff about the measles market or whatever. Like I would maybe be interested in that. Or if someone did on a big tent pole event, the Oscars are coming up, and I saw like a breakdown of like, these are the prices at the sports books relative to on the prediction markets. I would find that maybe interesting, but it's like, I don't know where you start with prediction market content.
Oh, it's coming. I know. I mean, I've had talks. Yeah. It's coming. Yeah. In what form and fashion it's going to be interesting. But again, like the beautiful thing of all this is you can build stuff so fast compared to what you used to do, where you have the process of from idea to implementation is probably 50 to 100x faster today than it was 5 years ago. So and we even saw it, when we developed like our Pick Labs product on RG and Fantasy Labs. Really proud of it. Think it's an awesome product. And I was joking with the guys that we're like, man, like this was like 2015. This would have taken us like 3 years to build. And it really didn't take us all that long once we figured out what we wanted to do and kind of had some of the engineers to start doing it. And, I think the same applies to this. Like you can have ideas and build on them very, very quick. And I think that's exciting. It's just like, what are those ideas? I mean, I have a few, but like the end of the day, it's just like, and also like, what are people going to pay for? Like, that's the other thing is DFS was always easy because, you know, we're paying for a tool that makes it easier for me to play DFS. Like, what's the tool that's going to make it easier for me to bet on a prediction market? I don't know that that's fully been fleshed out yet.
Yes, for sure. Me and Pete talk about this stuff all the time, but the content angle, I think super bullish on, because it's the least interesting thing about the prediction markets is the sports betting nonsense. That's the least interesting thing. The markets are
but it's
fun
the most liquid.
about.
It's the most liquid, though.
It's the most liquid, but the least interesting from a content perspective. Like, who wants to go, like, let's go on Kalshi and look at their lines for tonight's NBA. It's like, I'll pass. Yeah, you can. Let me go on the next channel because this one's boring. But if you want to talk about some strange market or something that's interesting or controversial, you could do an hour on a market, just one market that's interesting. So from like, I think that's kind of gonna be a piece of it. I mean, who knows where it could be illegal tomorrow. What do I know? But like, which, by the way, for me, this is all bullish because like less people will want to invest. Like, there'll be less competition because there are not as many risk takers. So, but leaving that aside, like, I see like the content creators, someone's going to blow up as a prediction market content creator, maybe, and then there'll be little smaller ones and you know, relatively blow up in that world, whatever you consider blowing up for that. And then from there, you could use that new corner of the internet as like a marketing affiliate tool for some other piece. The other piece, like you just said, what the hell is that? Where is this money going to come from? What would someone be willing to pay? That's a big question mark. And I don't, you know, who knows? I think that's a question mark for AI too, by the way. Like, where does that, I mean, they have to start making some money here real soon. This is very expensive to make, you know, cat picks and shit. So like, who knows where that goes?
No, I mean, I would say our entire economy, but a massive part of our economy now is just like, where does AI end up? When you look at like what is propping up the stock market over the last 24 months, and that's yet to be written, and you know, could be really good, could be really bad, you know, depending on how it goes. Is it job replacement? Is it, you know, I mean, somebody made just not to go off on a tangent here, but like somebody made was talking about nation, like, oh, you know, there was a time where horse and buggies were like the mode, and, you know, now we developed the cars. And then from there, you had all these other things that came along. But you got to remember that process was very slow, like, you know, decades, you know, slow growth getting here, where a lot of with AI with how fast it's moving and how quickly it's learning, like the pace of this is where it's scary, is because it's like, okay, there's going to be new things that come up. There's going to be new jobs that are spun off from AI, but those could be like 10 years before like AI has already replaced a bunch of jobs. It's not going to be like, it's not going to work in, you know, synchrony here where, okay, we're replacing, then we have new. It could be replacing, and then the new don't come until like way later. So like there's a little bit of worry there just because of like how this technology is in the speed that it's growing. So that's like a worry just from a macroeconomic thing that I certainly have.
And a dad too, I think.
And a dad.
I was thinking about this very topic just on the treadmill yesterday, and it's like, it's not just AI too. I think it's like from like 2007 or something, like the iPhone or maybe the internet boom. And I was thinking, just had this funny thought. I don't know if you guys have seen the meme of the beaver who was raised at home. It was like an orphan beaver, so they had to like take care of it. And it's this beaver. It's like in a suburb home. And it's grabbing everything in the house and blocking the hallway. Have you guys seen this? It's got like this. It's hilarious.
Seen this.
It's just it doesn't know what the fuck's going on. It's in a house. It's a beaver, and it's just grabbing like a SpongeBob doll and then a lampshade, and it's just filling up and blocking the wall. And they're recording this beaver act like a beaver in a suburb home. And I'm like, that's the perfect analogy for the human race right now. Is just like, we don't know what the fuck's going on. We're grabbing the SpongeBob. Like, I know, like, I'm an animal. I'm supposed to act a certain way in this new world I'm living in, and we're just throwing shit at the wall. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think like everyone's just
Is
trying
this
to.
it?
This is poor beaver. And he goes to town, like he fills this whole doorway up.
This is real.
This is real, yeah.
I thought this was just like a fake meme of like, wow.
Yeah, Christmas tree, why not?
That's
the most natural object he's grabbed so far for his normal environment.
I'm getting triggered because this is like constantly what my kitchen looks like with a toddler, where April says like, I'm going to bake a cake. And that involves stacking every pot and pan we have up as high as she can. And you walk into another room, you're like, oh God, now I have another mess to clean up.
Like, it doesn't know why it's doing this. It doesn't know what any of these objects are for. It just knows build dam.
It just doesn't
There's no water to dam, but just build it.
Right. This is the internet. This is like human beings just engaging with AI and iPhones when we've lived like kind of the same way for thousands of years, basically. You know,
this is wow. What a video! What a video!
There you go. All right, that's what the show's become. You know, that's the full circle. I mean, how did the internet start? The internet started with viral videos like Charlie Bit My Finger and animal smooth videos from, you know, America's Funniest Home Videos. And we've come full circle. You know, in the age of AI, we can still get enjoyment out of a beaver building a dam in a residential home. I love it.
SpongeBob toys.
So then, Dan, like, I know you said you're enjoying taking some time off, some golf, some pickleball, but obviously going to want to get back to things. Like, I assume, like, thinking about, like, you're having to triangulate your own kind of personal interests and also where would be a good time to spend your time, or like an industry where you can see long-term success. I assume something that you want to do for a long time. So this is a kind of a crazy time to be making a new kind of decision like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like 15, almost 20 years in this like fantasy gaming space. I have it from a content creator. I have it from an executive level, management, operations. I like know a lot. And if I, just decided to like switch gears and get into something totally different, I'd probably be wasting a lot of knowledge that I have. But on the flip side, I'm 47. I've got 16, 17-year-old, 13, 14-year-old. Like, I don't have the grind that I had when I was 30 years old to do a 5-day-a-week podcast, right? Like, I don't have the drive that I had back then. To be fully honest with you, like, I had a goal when I started. I wanted to be on Sirius XM radio. I accomplished that goal, and then everything that happened afterwards was just freaking gravy. If I looked at myself today and said, Dan, what would be like a fulfilling goal for you? It's probably to be like a scratch golfer, right? Like that's the kind of life I'm in right now, or just making sure my kids have a great life. Like those are like my biggest priorities right now.
Yeah.
So like, what can I do in this world that can scratch those itches, but still allow me to, use this knowledge and experience that I have. And I've got a few ideas on ways to make that happen. But, again, not in a hurry, just really enjoying kind of watching all this stuff play out and, being people along the way who have questions. And we'll see where it ends up. I just don't see myself like grinding my ass off right now. So like, if you're expecting to see a, rejuvenation of the podcast 5 days a week, it ain't happening, boys and girls. Like that's not
I just want to, for future Dan Bach employers, I just want earmuffs on. I'm not ready to grind my ass off. I don't want them to hear that before the negotiations.
Let me be very clear here too. This is 2 weeks after being at home. If after 3 months of this, I'll be like, shit, man, I need to grind my ass off. Like I am done with this life. But so subject to change without notice. I always like to add that little caveat.
What? Go ahead, Pete.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, do you have any interest in like getting back into content at all, or do you kind of feel like now that you're on
a
that
little
other side?
bit. Like I love this kind of stuff. Like this is great. Like this is still my jam. It's just like the content space, like it's just changed so much. Like radio was awesome. I loved doing radio. It was like an hour a day, maybe 2 hours a day. That was easy to knock out. You know, you have a co-host. It's like the quickest hour, 2 hours you will ever do. Same with this. I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 hours. It goes by like that. So a part of me loves it, would love to get back into it if the situation was right. But you know, so I'm not gonna say no to it. I just don't know that, you know, it's just gotta be the right situation.
I'm looking for a director for my political action committee, ban ETR. I don't know if you're you know, I know you have done some political work, so if you're interested, you know, I think we mentioned settlement earlier, and you're talking about making content 5 days a week. I just had this thought, like, people don't understand how hard it is, like Pete and Davis and these guys, where they make show after show, and how hard it is to keep doing. I know it's like not a real job or whatever, but like, man, because like I'll do like a podcast after, and then like I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything anymore. That was enough. You know, it is hard to keep up that grind, and people don't give enough respect. Not only that, like we were talking about, like who else can we get on the show and stuff. You know, we're always looking for guests. Like people don't even have interesting takes on Twitter, like to like be like, who could we get on? And like the one we said, well, Settlement had a take. Like that was really the only one we thought. And it's funny you mentioned him, because it's like, have some interesting takes, and people bitch, you know, like, oh my God, I can't believe Davis or Pat Mayo had this take. It's like, what do you want? Like, that's the fucking point.
Well, that's why it was so much easier in the, you know, early 2010s to do this, because you know, there wasn't this chamber of like, if you have a take, like, and somebody doesn't agree with it, it wasn't immediately being like shit upon, right? Like, I guarantee you there's probably stuff here that I've said today that is going to probably come back and people will aggregate or mention at some point in time. And that sucks, you know, and that's where I always loved radio the best, because radio kind of like, once you did it, it was gone. Right? Where if you do a tweet, you do a live stream like this, people flipping it and shoving it back in your face one way or another, usually for the bad, not the good. When you say something stupid, somebody will call you out on it. That was the best thing, and still the best thing about radio, is you could say something and then 5 seconds later it's gone. Like, unless some psycho out there is recording everything you do. And I had a few of those over my time in radio, but it's not as easy as it is to just clip a tweet or retweet with your own comment. And everybody has opinions on everything today. So I think that makes it that
none of them interesting. None of them interesting though.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful, like for a lot of people, their Twitter is their kind of one and only platform to kind of talk, whatever, you know, promote things. I like, with how it's gone, I'm so thankful to have this YouTube channel. Like, for instance, like when the underdog stuff happened, I wanted to say something, and the initial thing would be like, you compose a tweet or whatever, and that wouldn't even cross my mind to share those thoughts on Twitter. And I was like, so thankful, hey, at the end of Best Ball Breakfast, I can say my piece, say what I want to say, and like it can be there, and that's like a forum I'm far more comfortable doing. One, it's for my direct audience, not the you know, the peanut gallery on X, but just the way people feel comfortable commenting on X. It's just such a bizarre place for discourse to happen, and a lot of unproductive discourse.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still like an X guy. I still like linger. I don't engage, but I love, and I also like just, I don't know. I just love the psychopaths who go back and forth with each other. Like, it's just entertaining to me. Like, it's not good for society, but man, I still watch what other people do, and I'm very simple. It's like, you're so mad. Why are you on this platform? Just delete the app. Like, if you're that angry about, like, why do you have an opinion on everything? And if you don't agree with it, and you're legitimately have 30 followers, like, people don't care what you think. Like, just delete it. Just delete the app. Or if you do have a lot of followers and then people start getting mad at stuff you say and you fire back at them, well, just don't, just delete the app. It's so much easier, but people love that engagement. Like that is crack. That is X, is when you get that notification that somebody commented something that you had, that there's a heart or there's a retweet. I mean, for me, it became too much. I tweeted, my most viral tweet ever was, I was watching the Masters and Colin Morikawa, they had a video of him. He dropped his marker and then moved his ball not near his marker, like in front of him. And I was like, man, I think Colin Morikawa cheated. And the announcers were
I remember this.
They were like, man, I've never seen that before. Like, what just happened? So I just clipped it and said, I think Colin Morikawa just cheated. Next thing I know, like, my mentions were out of control. Like, I don't know how anybody who goes viral can deal with it. And it was so bad. It was so bad that my wife just started with her new company here in Nashville. Her boss sent a picture to her and said, do you know this guy? And she's like, yeah, we've been married for like 17 years. And when it's on your wife's boss's like Twitter stream, I was like, okay, this is enough. So I deleted it, like, obviously positive engagement, but I couldn't take it. I could not take the vitriol people had for me for something that was so simple that, like, was very clear too when the broadcasting announcers were confused by it. But that's what Twitter is.
Well, and it's a bummer because, like, to Brian's point, like, I enjoyed reading you go back and forth with Jack on that topic, but those kind of exchanges with two people just talking in good faith, like, that represents like less than 1% of the things on the site. And
that's
yeah,
like
a lot
today,
of that,
man. Like, isn't that what we need of? Like, we talk about it all the time. Like, the best podcasts are people who respect each other but don't agree with each other. And I think it's the biggest problem we have in the world today, not to get on a soapbox here, but like politically and all over the planet, is everybody's got opinion and they will not be swayed one way or another, rather than just having interesting back and forth dialogue. That is the best stuff. That's what this world needs more of, is not necessarily speaking to the people who you agree with. It's speaking to the people you don't, but them respecting you. And there's not enough respect in this world. And it's really, I don't know how it changes, but man, I hope it does it sometime.
You know how it changes? AI and prediction markets. That's going to get us back to treating each other well again.
Yes. I don't care about the cesspool stuff. Just give me an occasion.
Well, yeah, Mr. Gooner over there, you were born in the cesspool.
Okay, last question for you, Brian. Are the Bears going to go to Indiana or Arlington Heights?
I know a lobbyist close to the situation. I haven't been able to talk to him, so I'm going to find out shortly.
Hey, Brian, how about before you make that information public, we get a little money down on a prediction market once you know what
they have it on call sheet. They have it on call sheet.
Do they?
They do.
Okay.
What do you think is his favorite?
All right. Well, if I get some inside info, we'll start a secret group chat. And
what are the percentages right now, Dan? You said you looked at it.
It was like 65% to move to somewhere else in Illinois, and like 25% to go to Indiana, and the rest to like Soldier Field.
One of the big sticking points is the Sox need a new state or want a new stadium as well. And so they have like intertwined their interests, and the Sox are not happy about it. I know that. So like the state, because there's only so much money to go around. So that's definitely a problem, and makes a little more sense of going to Hammond, because then you don't have to deal with the White Sox and the money needed for that new stadium. But I don't know. I'm gonna ask, see if I can find any information on that.
I think it's gonna be Arlington Heights. I feel pretty confident of that.
He's been there. The Arlington Heights mayor is a very active mayor who's really trying hard to make that a better area. And so I'm sure he would love it. But man, it's been a while that they've been talking about that and nothing's happened. So
well, it's all political posture. It's all about just trying to get the deal. It's leverage both ways until the last. These things work. It's politics. You wait until the last second and then you get the deal done, and both sides give a little something they could have done 2 years ago, but nobody wanted to do it. It's gonna. They're not gonna go to Indiana. It's not gonna happen. I don't think.
Okay.
But there you go.
If you have an inside tip, let me
know.
So Kalshi will eventually ban players, and Chicago Bears not going to Hammond. We got our titles.
Well, Dan, how about maybe something to close on? I mean, now that you're kind of a free man. How about some free consulting either for Lowell's, for myself, for Brian? You were given kind of Underdog some free tips there. Can we get any of that Dan Bach DFS pixie dust? What should we be doing with our businesses and our content?
I think you guys should keep doing what you're doing with Lulz. I've been waiting for this invite. I was kind of scared to ever come on it when I was a corporate honcho, because I was I feel like there's nothing good that, but now that I'm not, I feel like it was the right time to do it. So I appreciate you guys, because I almost feel like you filled that gap of industry topics I used to do. And that was always my favorite thing to do on the podcast. So you guys have, continued to do it, and maybe you should just do more on prediction markets with it or something. I don't know. Somebody needs to be the voice of prediction markets. I don't think it's going to be me. But that probably exists out there for somebody if they want to, grind their ass off and be that guy. But I'll tell you what, it's though, because the one thing that was cool with RG was I could give opinions, and the sites respected it enough to know okay, we do business with RG. It's okay. We think Dan is saying things that's in the best interest of our business. There wasn't one time where Cal was you got to back off. You're talking too aggressively about something negative, which was really surprising considering how much business we did with those companies, especially early on. And we never did it. And I think it just kind of showed the trust that they had in us and me. And I think that's a little trickier these days, though, because you're already seeing, the badges on Twitter between Polymarket and Kalshi, going back against each other, and people who have strong opinions. I know Dustin Gauker talks a lot about Kalshi, and then they don't include him in anything that they do right now because they think he's a hater. So I think it's a little difficult, a little tougher to maneuver than maybe it was in early days DFS, but I think it would be good to have somebody be the accountable voice for prediction markets.
Yeah That'd be nice. I'm going to start with just some interesting opinions and thoughts would be great from people. And you can, and if you do that, people will invite you on their podcast, believe it or not. If you say something interesting, people want to know, people want to hear, because it was a struggle this week, Pete, looking for interesting takes on all the developments we've talked about today.
Yeah, and I think, to give people watching this too, Brian and I took a little bit of a break with Lulz, and I think our plan, it might be a little less frequent shows, not every Thursday at 1 p.m. or whatever, but when there's a meaty topic like this, we'd like to assemble. We asked Pat Mayo to come on to this show, and he's down in Florida covering the TGL stuff or something, and couldn't do it, but obviously wanted his thoughts kind of from a content perspective on where he sees things going. So we might be a little more infrequent, but when we do, hopefully it packs a punch like this, or we kind of have a meaty topic. Otherwise, we were just going to spend 45 minutes talking about Yahoo not properly issuing 1099s for their DFS players today.
Did they fix it? I think they fixed it, right?
Did they?
I think they finally started responding, at least to some of the players. That's as far as I saw on Twitter. I don't know. That was pretty wacky.
Yeah.
That would not have been fun.
Just so people who aren't online like we are, they weren't counting all of like the cost associated with the contest entries. So somebody could theoretically have a $90,000 tax bill when they barely won anything because they weren't properly subtracting and adding the fees.
Yes. And so as Eric said, it overstated income to the IRS by a factor of 5 to 15x for most people there. So I guess a lesson in doing a lot of your own bookkeeping alongside these sites to make sure that
but like that could trigger a audit, because they get this report and then you're so like it's real disaster. Yahoo was such a great DFS product there for a while too. Unfortunately, they didn't really keep up with it.
So that's all to say. If you guys ever have ideas for guests or you see interesting things, just drop it in the Lulz channel in the Deposit Kingdom Discord. We kind of check in there, get ideas for topics and all of that stuff. And we'll definitely get Pat on as well. And Dan, especially during your free agent period, you're more than welcome to come back. I'm sure in this quickly evolving space, there's always going to be some juicy things to talk about. So you're welcome back whenever.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, I do care about the industry a lot. It's been something I've been doing for a long time, so I'm always happy to add to the conversation when it makes sense. I thought it made sense to do right now after all the stuff that's been going on throughout the industry, and keep up the good work on your guys' end. Really enjoy the shows, and thanks for having me.
Of course. Brian, anything else on your end here?
I don't think so. PGA season's kind of starting to get rolled, back into like some more traditional tournaments here, DFS wise, and then baseball's around the corner. That's pretty much all we got right now, Pete.
Yep. For me, I'm gonna do an After Dark show tomorrow for YouTube member Sam Sherman, BBM champ. Haven't had a chance to talk to him since he sweated out those BBM finals on ship chasing. So maybe I can find out about his next move as well. He's been teasing that he might leave his corporate gig to get in the fantasy tout space again. And then I'm heading out to LA on Friday for the Underdog NBA Dog Bowl. So we'll have a show out there on Saturday for you guys and share some content live from the NBA Dog Bowl. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Thank you to Dan. Of course, good luck with your future endeavors. For Brick, I'm Pete. This has been Lulz. We'll see you guys next time.